The NFL is rating college football talent like never before. A record 73 players have opted early to enter the NFL draft this April, 17 along the defensive front. MarkRogersTV, let's run down the top 10 players coming back to college football at defensive line, the ends, and the tackles. This is a good list, but as evidenced by the 17 going early to the NFL, not a great list, but starts with a great player, the freak, Jadeveon Clowney in South Carolina. 13 sacks, 23 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles. I think I've seen one of those. Yeah, the Outback Bowl against Vincent Smith, a play that you've seen a million times. Maybe at this point it's become hyperbole, maybe it's become historic, legendary. It's a thing of myth, but we've seen it on video a million times. Maybe it's a bit overrated. Vincent Smith is 175 pounds, but Jadeveon Clowney is a freak at defensive end. He's coming back as a junior to South Carolina. Maybe not just the best defensive end in the country, maybe the best player. He possibly would have been the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Some say that he should probably sit out and save himself for the NFL, but he's going to be back, and he's going to be back against North Carolina in Game 1, the opener, August 29th for South Carolina. #2 is a guy that I really like, Devonte Fields out of TCU, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year as a freshman. 10 sacks, a pick, and 18.5 tackles for loss. He's a freak himself at 6'4", 220. Devonte Fields is actually 240 pounds, and yeah, he's one of the best defensive players in the country at #2. #3, we go to Notre Dame, and of course the season ended horribly, but 12-0 before there, and one of the big reasons why is Stephon Tuitt at defensive end for Notre Dame at 12 sacks, 13.5 tackles for loss. He was a second-team All-America. At #4, we stay in South Bend for Louis Nix III. We move inside. He's a run stuffer at 326 pounds. At one point, he was 368. He's conditioned. He's gotten quicker. He promised Mom he would come back to Notre Dame, and he's fulfilled that promise. He could have went to the NFL. He ties up 2 blockers, and he made that guy, Manti Te'o, a star at Notre Dame, freeing up and clearing those tackling opportunities for Te'o. At #5, we've got Will Sutton, a guy out of Arizona State you've probably not heard of, and if you have heard of him, you probably haven't seen him play. But he was the defensive MVP of the bowl game against Navy for Arizona State. And Will Sutton played a serious season at 23 tackles for loss, 13 sacks. His coaches think he is so good that he left 8 sacks on the board, on the table. He could improve tremendously. He bench pressed 225 20 times last season. His goal's 28. He's going to gain weight. And again, he left a lot of sacks on the table. And Will Sutton is one of the best players coming back in college football at Arizona State. Our final 6 starts with Scott Crichton, defensive end out of Oregon State. So we stay in the Pac-12. This guy had 9 sacks and 17 tackles for loss. Crichton was a first-team All Pac-12 selection for defense for the Beavers out of Corvallis that was second in the Pac-12 behind a great Stanford defense in points against per game. He was rated by ESPNU as the 21st rated player in 2012 in the Pac-12. At #7, we've got Morgan Breslin at defensive end for USC, a very talented USC defense, but a very underachieving SC defense. So it's going to be up to Breslin and company to make it back for Lane Kiffin in 2013 without Matt Barkley and Robert Woods leading the offense. Breslin had 13 sacks and 19.5 tackles for loss for SC in 2012. At #8, we go to the SEC, and Chris Smith out of Arkansas, defensive tackle for the underachieving Hogs, had 9.5 sacks and 13 tackles for loss. He will be back as Arkansas tries to make its way in a rugged, ridiculously rugged SEC Western Division. At #9, we've got Henry Anderson of Stanford. He was huge in the huge upset over Oregon, which led the Cardinal to the Pac-12 championship game and a shot at the Rose Bowl. He had 7 tackles in that game, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. He had 5.5 sacks as a sophomore, and Henry Anderson racked up 13 tackles for loss. Again, for that Stanford defense, one of the best in college football. At #10, finally, we've got DeMarcus Lawrence of Boise State. He had 9.5 sacks, 13.5 tackles for loss for an 11-2 team that, of course, lives off offense typically. But at Boise State, they relied on the defense in 2012 at giving up just 15 points per game, and DeMarcus Lawrence was a huge reason why. Those are the 10 best defensive ends and linemen coming back to college football in 2013. Where do we miss it? Tell us about it here on Mark Rogers TV.